Hey guys, tonight we take a foggy stroll through the twisted brambles of 17th century England, where the hills breathe secrets, and the winds whisper names not meant to be spoken aloud. You're wrapped in a worn cloak, boots sinking into the rain slick mud of Lancashire's Pendle Hill. There's something in the air, maybe it's just the wet leaves rotting sweetly in the grass, or maybe it's the way every cottage window seems to blink shut as you pass. Welcome to a place where superstition walks in daylight, and a careless glance can get you hanged. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's listening from the shadowiest corners tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You cross a mossy stone stile and step into the year 1612. The English countryside is neither quaint nor cozy, it's bleak, suspicious, and packed with people who fully believe that a neighbor can hex your cow with a whisper. Religion has been seesawing violently since Henry VIII decided he wanted a divorce. More than a pope, the monarch now is James I. Yep, the guy behind the King James Bible, but he's also a witch-hunting enthusiast who wrote a whole book called Demonology. So yeah, if you think Harry Potter stirred up controversy, imagine publishing Witchcraft for Dummies as a king. Pendle Hill looms ahead like a crouching beast. Its slopes are steep and scarred with sheep paths and peat bogs. Its summit often lost in cloud. But more than anything, it has a reputation. Locals call it wild country, cursed ground, place of devils, or at least deeply eccentric families. You tread carefully. The stones here remember things. Your first stop is a tiny hamlet called Barley. Imagine maybe a dozen damp cottages, all low beams and smoky chimneys, huddled like they're gossiping behind your back. Everyone knows everyone. And that's the problem. You can't sneeze without someone accusing you of trying to hex their turnips. Superstition isn't folklore here, it's survival. A bad harvest? Blame the witch. Sudden illness. Witch milk goes sour? Honestly, probably still a witch. But Pendle isn't just haunted by fear, it's haunted by poverty. England's economy is struggling, and in this rural corner of Lancashire, most people survive by begging, healing with herbs, or muttering prayers over livestock. To families in particular have made themselves useful and suspicious. One is led by an old woman named Elizabeth Southerns, known around here as Demdike. The other, and Whittle, nicknamed Chattox. These two matriarchs are like the Montagues and Capulets of low-stakes sorcery, except instead of swords, they use poppets and eye-rolling. Demdike's family is scrappier, poorer, and much more theatrical. She's ancient, blind in one eye, and may or may not have sold her soul to a demon named Tib in exchange for a life of minor mischief and curse grafting. She lives with her daughter Jennet Device and Elizabeth's kids, including the now infamous Alazon, who we'll come back to soon, trust me. They sell herbs, charms, and bad attitude. Chattox, on the other hand, has a reputation for darker dealings. She claims noble blood, of course she does, but now lives in a crumbling house with her daughter in Redfern. People whisper that Chattox once turned a man's beer sour just by glaring at it. And look, if you've ever had bad ale in a tavern, you might find that excuse oddly satisfying. These families hate each other. It's not just a matter of business rivalry, it's decades of petty thefts, insults, and whispered slights. One stole a cloak, the other cursed a cow. Someone's child got sick after a bad look. Frankly, you need a family tree just to track the grudges. And into this bubbling cauldron of resentment steps you. Not literally, of course, but imagine watching from the mist as the fire is about to catch. Here's your quirky tidbit for tonight. Demdike may have once confessed casually to having a mark on her body where her familiars suckle blood. Familiars, by the way, are like demonic Tamagotchis, animal spirits given to witches by the devil. They're usually cats, dogs, or birds, but sometimes toads, because why not? Elizabeth Device later said her mother's familiar was a brown dog named Ball. You can't make this stuff up, except they did, probably under torture. But historians still argue whether these families really believed they were practicing magic or whether they were just leaning into the only identity that gave them power in a society that had none to spare. Were they witches? Or were they just poor, female, and mouthy? The thing is, the lines between medicine, superstition, and criminality were paper thin. If you helped someone recover from a fever with nettle tea, and then later they caught pneumonia, guess what? You've gone from wise woman to murderer. It all depended on who you helped and who got hurt. And the people of Pendle, they remember every hurt. The landscape itself seems to lean in, listening to every quarrel and curse, every broken fence or spoiled cream. You walk past crumbling dry stone walls and feel the air tighten. as if the ground knows what's coming, because something is brewing. Something bigger than just family feuds and muttered charms. One spark, just one, is about to turn these simmering tensions into England's most infamous witch trial. You pause near Malkin Tower, the home of the Devices. It's little more than a ruin now, perched like a secret on the hillside. But back then, it was a place where people gathered, where spells were whispered and grievances fermented like sour beer. You imagine the flicker of tallow candles inside, the scent of burnt herbs curling under the rafters. Something is coming. You can feel it. But for now, the moors stay quiet. Rain softens the edge of everything. Sheep graze, oblivious. And in the mist, Demdike murmurs an old rhyme under her breath. Maybe it's a prayer. Maybe it's a curse. You follow the trail deeper into Pendle's belly, skirting hedgerows that bristle with thorns and gossip. The wind shifts damp, earthy, laced with wood smoke and something a bit sharper, like crushed nettles. Around here, even the landscape seems to mutter. And beneath that muttering, a feud, so tangled and bitter it could strangle itself. The Demdike and Chattox families don't just dislike each other, they practically breathe different air. Where Demdike walks the moor with her clan in tow, muttering charms and bartering for scraps, Chattox prowls like a half-starved hawk, always watching, always sniffing out insult. You could say they're Pendle's version of street gangs, except their weapons are dead rabbits nailed to doors and pointed fingers during illness. The root of their hatred, a decades-old theft, a cloak, allegedly stolen by Demdike's crew from Chattox's son-in-law. Yes, that's it, a cloak. And from that petty grievance, generations of tension snowballed. By now, the stories are so layered, no one even remembers who cursed whose butter churned first. But here's the thing. These aren't to covens in black robes casting fireballs from hilltops. These are poor, aging women trying to survive in a world that wants them silent, preferably barefoot, and definitely not opinionated. And yet, both families know how to wield fear like a dagger. You pass by a thatched cottage where a string of dried bird bones clinks gently in the breeze. Not decoration, warning, a charm, maybe, or a message. Familiars are always watching. Let's talk about those for a second. Familiars. In this part of England, people truly believed witches were given spirit helpers by the devil himself. These weren't just pets. No. These were intelligent beings that whispered secrets, drank blood from secret marks on their master's body, and carried out magical errands. Picture a cross between a spy drone and an overly attached emotional support animal. Demdike, according to her own ramblings, was gifted her familiar decades ago. The creature named Tib first appeared in the shape of a boy with a half-black face. And that's how you know this is 17th century horror. Even the demons had fashion statements. Tib promised her all the power she could handle, in exchange for, you guessed it, her soul. Demdike, ever practical, apparently shrugged and signed right up. But Chattox, she had a different tale. Her familiar was a black cat called Fancy, yes, really, who helped her kill cattle, spoil beer, and possibly give a man a terminal backache. Depending on which villager you ask. One thing's clear, Fancy had a much better name than Tib. Probably would have had more Instagram followers too. Meanwhile, their children inherit not only their blood but their enemies. Elizabeth Device, Demdike's daughter, is short-tempered, sharp-tongued, and always ready to throw a neighbor under the ox cart if it keeps her family alive one more week. Her own daughter, Alizon, is known for her dark looks and quick temper, and soon, very soon, she'll become the kindling for the blaze to come. Across the fields, Chattox's daughter in Redfern has a gentler reputation. Some say she's the least witchy of the lot, but guilt by association is a powerful thing, especially when your mother has a talent for theatrics and a nose for revenge. And the villagers, oh, they're watching all of this like it's the best show in town. Which honestly, it kind of is. In a world with no Netflix, a neighbor's misfortune is prime-time entertainment. You get the sense that many of them don't really believe in witches, but they believe in consequences. Someone gets sick. Blame the family that once muttered under their breath at the market. A child falls into the fire. Remember that strange little pouch of herbs you saw tucked under the hearth? Must be witchcraft. Here's your historical fact for this stretch. 1612 is a big year for England. King James I has decreed that every judge in the land must actively prosecute witches. No more turning a blind eye. No more letting strange old women be strange. This year, every accusation is a match waiting for a fuse. And Pendle is about to become a very bright bonfire. Historians still argue whether the Pendle families genuinely believed they were working magic, or if they simply performed the idea of witchcraft for survival. After all, healing, cursing, blessing, livestock, it's all part of the same vocabulary here. The line between herbalist and hexer is as thin as a sheep's wool thread. But you, walking through this bitter little corner of Lancashire, can't help but notice something else. It's not just fear of magic that drives these villagers, it's class. These women are poor, vulnerable, and inconvenient. They beg at doors, sleep three to a bed, speak with strange accents, and make people uncomfortable. Labeling them witches is tidy, clean, a way to say they aren't like us, even when us is barely scraping by. At the village well, you overhear a whispered tale. A man claims his daughter went blind after refusing alms to Jennet Device. The girl had laughed, he says, mocked Elizon's ragged dress. Within hours, her eyes clouded over. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it was just enough of a story to tip the balance. You can almost hear the scales creaking. Another villager swears that Chattox turned his beer to vinegar after he shorted her a coin. Yet another claims to have seen in red fern drawing symbols on the side of a cow. These aren't formal accusations, yet they're rumors, hints. But Pendle is a place where hints grow teeth. And then, you catch wind of something new. A gathering. Malkin Tower again. The Devices are calling in favors, gathering old friends. Brewing something, not literally. Though wouldn't that be on brand? No. This is more dangerous. A meeting of possible witches, a Sabbath, perhaps. Or maybe just a poor family trying to survive in a world that's about to devour them. But it doesn't matter what it actually is. What matters is who's watching. Because not far away, a magistrate is taking notes. And he's about to turn every spat, every side eye, every shadow into evidence. You leave the moor with mud on your boots and something colder clinging to your spine. The families of Pendle don't know it yet, but their feud has spilled into the open. And in 1612 England, that's a death sentence waiting to be signed. You're standing on the rough edge of a country lane, the kind that's more mud than road, with hedges taller than you on either side. Something shifted. The wind isn't just cool anymore, it's watching. You step aside as a rider trots past on a tall chestnut horse, his cloak snapping behind him like a courtroom curtain. That's Roger Noel, Justice of the Peace. And if you're anyone in Pendle trying to keep your head attached, you stay very quiet when he's in earshot. Because this isn't just another superstitious spring in Lancashire. It's March of 1612, and a girl named Jennet Device has just blown everything wide open. Here's how it starts. Jennet is begging along the road to Colne. She's about 16, barefoot, hair wild, sharp as broken glass. She runs into a peddler, John Law, a traveling seller of pins and odds and ends. She asks for some. He refuses, and in the heat of rejection, maybe out of spite, maybe just habit, Jennet hisses a curse. Moments later, John Law collapses. His face contorts, his speech slurs, and his arm goes limp. A stroke, maybe, or bad luck, or the wrath of a teenage beggar with a reputation. That's all it takes. Law's son drags him to a magistrate. A full-blown investigation is launched, but instead of denying it, Jennet confesses in vivid, unasked for detail. She says she sold her soul to the devil, that she cursed Law without thinking, that her grandmother Demdike taught her witchcraft. She names names. Lots of them, including members of the rival Chattox family. It's like someone cracked open a bottle, and the truth, or at least a version of it, is spilling fast and furious. And that magistrate, Roger Noel, he's not just listening, he's thrilled. Witchcraft is political capital these days, especially for ambitious men in fringe counties. And Noel sees a career boost in every dark tale. He arrests Demdike, Jennet, and Elizabeth Device on the spot. But here's the kicker. He also arrests and whittled Chattox and in Red Fern, her daughter. Why? Because Jennet blamed them too. And because Noel, like everyone else in Lancashire, knows about the feud. If the Demdikes are witches, surely the Chattoxes are as well, guilt by rivalry. Here's your historical fact. In 1612, King James I issued an order requiring all justices of the peace to compile a list of recusants, people who refused to attend Anglican church. Many so-called witches were also Catholic sympathizers. The Pendle region was thick with recusants, including the accused. So in Noel's eyes, he isn't just purging witches, he's fighting treason. Convenient, no? The arrested women are tossed into Lancaster Castle, a place so foul even the rats petition for better housing. But that's just the beginning. Because back in Pendle, the remaining Devices aren't exactly laying low. Remember Malkin Tower, the rickety family home halfway up the hill? Well, Elizabeth's youngest son, James Device, a twitchy, intense teen, decides to host a gathering there on Good Friday. A Sabbath, some say. Not the religious kind. This one includes meat, a huge no during Lent, whispered plans to break the witches out of jail, and enough scandal to make the local priest clutch his Bible until the ink runs. Who attends? Friends, family, maybe a few curious villagers who like free food, but according to one maid, Grey Sourbits, yes. Sourbits, the universe is jokes. The talk at Malkin Tower turns treasonous. There's mention of blowing up Lancaster Castle, of stealing sheep and turning invisible, of shape-shifting, devil packs, and all the usual party games. The maid's testimony, probably coaxed by adults with agendas, paints the gathering as a full-blown coven meeting. Noel is thrilled. Again. He rounds up everyone who so much as looked at Malkin Tower that day. More names. More confessions. More power. But here's your quirky tidbit. One accused witch, Alice Nutter, is different. She's wealthy, educated, well-dressed. Not your usual suspect. Alice owns land, gives generously to the poor, and minds her own business. And yet, she ends up on the same list as women who can't even sign their names. Why? Historians still argue whether she truly practiced witchcraft or whether her Catholic ties, her independence, or just her quiet defiance made her dangerous. That's the thing about witch hunts. They aren't about witches. They're about control, fear, breaking people down until they name their friends, their rivals, their own mothers. By now, the accused number 12. Some are old, some are children. All are locked in the dungeon of Lancaster Castle awaiting trial. Their words, spoken under pressure, now serve as evidence against each other. Brother testifies against sister. Daughters accuse mothers. One woman, Jennet Preston, is dragged in from Yorkshire just for being on speaking terms with Demdike. She's tried separately and executed first. As you walk through the moss-covered ruins of Malkin Tower, you wonder what was really said that day. Maybe it was just a desperate family sharing stolen mutton. Maybe they dreamed, for one foolish hour, that they could outwit the news. Either way, it sealed their fate. Back at the castle, the air is thick with damp stone and fear. The prisoners huddle in total darkness, ankle-deep in slime, surrounded by roaches and rotting straw. Lancaster Castle is no cozy oubliette, it's more pit than prison. And still, testimonies pouring. Children are especially useful. Enter Jennet Device, Elizen's younger sister, barely 9 years old. She takes the stand, climbs onto a table, to be seen, and calmly accuses her own mother and siblings of witchcraft. Think about that. A child's words, treated as gospel, the court eats it up. A tiny voice, weaponized. You're outside the courthouse now. The air is heavy, stagnant. The crowd gathering in the square smells of smoke, sweat, and anticipation. The trial is days away. And Pendle Hill, quiet in the distance, doesn't care. It has watched all of this before. But you're starting to feel the weight of this story. Not just its cruelty, but its absurdity. Its slow, spiraling descent into tragedy. A web spun from fear and desperation and lies, tightening around people who had nothing except maybe a few herbs and a little anger. The judges are packing their robes. The scaffold is being built. And somewhere inside that damp stone prison, someone whispers a prayer or a curse or both, because now it's time for the trial. And England is watching. You step through the thick wooden doors of Lancaster Castle's courtroom, and the air immediately changes. It's staler here, clouded with old breath, damp wool, and the unmistakable tension of people trying to act like they know what they're doing. The trial of the Pendle Witches is about to begin, and let's be honest, it's already over. 12 people sit accused of witchcraft. Most of them are women. All of them are poor except Alice Nutter, the outlier in velvetan. Every one of them is about to discover just how little their lives are worth to the crown. The courtroom is crowded. Magistrates, scribes, the curious, the hungry for scandal. There's no defense counsel, no trained representation, just a few judges, including Sir James Altham and Sir Edward Bromley, both loyal servants of King James, and both determined to impress. And there, perched like a child-sized raven on a wooden stool, is 9-year-old Jennet Device. Her legs don't reach the floor. Her voice shakes only once. She's the prosecution's star witness, and this little girl is about to collapse her own family tree. But let's rewind just a bit. The accused were never really given a chance. The evidence against them is hearsay stacked on hearsay, whipped together with scraps of confession, wild testimony, and a good amount of imagination. Alizen Device still insists she bewitched John Law. Demdike is already dead, died imprisoned before she could stand trial, likely from the conditions. Her death is treated as suspicious confirmation, as if even death itself was a spell. The others deny everything. At first, but denial means nothing here. Not when the climate is already so poisoned. King James's demonology looms over the room like a bad ghostwriter. According to it, witches are real, organized, and deserve to be executed. The judges quote from it like a sacred script. All they need is confirmation, preferably from someone young, innocent, easily manipulated. Enter Jennet. When she climbs up to testify against her mother, Elizabeth Device screams in protest. Loud, guttural wailing, she's dragged from the courtroom, weeping, while her daughter calmly lists the devil's mark on her body, the charms she found, the curses she overheard. A child accusing her own blood. It's such a compelling scene, it almost writes itself. The judges nod gravely. The crowd drinks it in. Historians still argue whether Jennet's testimony was coached or coerced, whether she understood what she was doing or if, as some suggest, she was manipulated by Roger Noel and others into playing the perfect role. Either way, her voice seals more than one fate. James Device Eliason's brother is next. He's young, hot-tempered, and nervous. Under pressure, he folds like damp linen. He confesses to witchcraft, to attending the Malkin Tower meeting, to seeing familiars in the shape of a black dog and a human-headed hare. The imagery is wild. The courtroom eats it up. Then there's Catherine Hewitt, Mold Heels they called her, who supposedly helped kill a child. Alice Gray, who insists she's innocent, but is still lumped in with the rest. And Alice Nutter, proud and composed, accused of murdering Henry Mitten after he refused to convert to Catholicism. Her presence unsettles the court. She speaks clearly. She doesn't weep. She doesn't grovel. That, ironically, might be her greatest offense. Your quirky detail for this moment. Some testimonies include claims that the accused rode on horseback through the sky, invisibly, to Sabbaths where they feasted on stolen sheep and danced with the devil. One said the devil appeared as a boy in a black coat. Another said he looked like a dog that spoke English. Somewhere, a theologian takes notes. The judges nod solemnly through all of it. And then in red fern, she's accused of killing a man with clay puppets figurines stuck with pins, or baked over fires intended to harm the person they represented, and doesn't confess. She denies everything, quietly, firmly. It doesn't matter. Guilt by proximity. Her mother, Chattox, is barely coherent in court. Her confession was extracted earlier, likely under duress or just to end the misery. Either way, her fate is already sewn up like a burial shroud. Across for days of trial, the accused are paraded, examined, condemned. No one gets a proper defense. No one has the chance to explain the complexity of their lives, or the social tensions that wrap them in the storm. To the court, they're not people. They're props in a morality play about sin, temptation, and divine justice. And here's your historical fact. The Pendle Witch Trials became one of the most well-documented witch trials in English history, thanks to a clerk named Thomas Potts, who compiled a sensationalist account titled The Wonderful Discovery of Witches in the County of Lancashire. Potts edited the trial records to flatter the judges and make the proceedings seem more heroic. It was published almost immediately, like a 17th century true crime bestseller. Of the 12 accused, 10 are found guilty. 1 is acquitted. 1, as we mentioned, is already dead. They are sentenced to death by hanging, not burning, by the way England's preferred method for which execution was hanging, not fire. That's a common mix-up, probably thanks to European trials and a few too many horror films. You follow the condemned as they're led to the scaffold just outside the castle walls. There's no dignity in the procession. Ropes are coiled like snakes in the executioner's hands. The air smells of tallow, blood, and too many bodies pressed too close. The crowd murmurs, maybe from discomfort, maybe from excitement. This is the big finale, the show they've been waiting for. Elizabeth Device cries. James stares blankly at the ground. Elizabeth, their mother, refuses to look at anyone. Alice Nutter walks with her chin high, though her eyes have turned hard as granite. One by one, they step forward. And one by one, they drop. No last words are recorded. No protest heard. The crowd watches until the feet stop twitching, and then drifts back into the streets. Life continues. The pubs open. The gossip mutates into legend. And Jennet Device, the child whose testimony helped kill her entire family, becomes famous, lauded, used as a model witness for later trials. Until, of course, decades later, she too is accused of witchcraft based on her own words, now echoed back like a curse. You stand at the base of the empty gallows. The wood still damp with dew. The hill behind you looms darker now. The air is still. But even in silence, you feel it. This wasn't justice. It was theater. And, like all good plays, it ends with ghost. You wander the slope below Lancaster Castle, the grass wet against your boots. As the last of the gallows shadow disappears behind the morning fog, it should feel like the end of something, but somehow it doesn't. The crowd has scattered. The ropes have been cut down, and the names are already fading on people's lips. But the silence left behind, that hangs heavier than any news. The trials are over. 10 are dead. The scaffold has done its work. And yet, Pendle feels anything but settled. Back in the villages, windows open just a crack wider. Conversations resume at market stalls, but they've changed. Tighter. Guarded. No one wants to say the wrong thing. No one wants to be next. Because, now, it's clear. All it takes is one bad word, one neighbor's suspicion, one child's testimony, and you could vanish into that castle dungeon with the rest. You pass the ruins of Malkin Tower again, weeds curling through the stones. No one's rebuilt it. No one's claimed the land. It just sits here, sunken into the hillside like a mouth trying not to scream. You imagine Elizabeth Device's final breath, Elizon's tears, Alice Nutter's defiant eyes. You wonder how long their names will echo. Turns out, longer than anyone expected. Because this case, the Pendle Witch Trials, won't fade like the others. Thomas Potts's book turns the whole ordeal into a lurid spectacle. The wonderful discovery isn't just a legal document, it's propaganda. Printed, distributed, gossiped over in taverns and parishes all across England. The accused are immortalized not as victims, but as monsters, warnings, sinners. You can almost hear Potts sharpening his quill with a grin, polishing Jennet Device's testimony until it gleams like a dagger. For a while, the book works. Judges read it. Clergy quote it. Witch trials continue. And for a moment, it seems like the Pendle accused are lost forever, beneath layers of fear-soaked fiction. But then something strange happens. The ghosts begin to speak back. Not literally, of course. This isn't that kind of bedtime story. But in time, historians return to Pendle Hill. They dig. They question. They write new books. And suddenly, the neat little narrative Potts constructed begins to unravel. Alice Nutter wasn't poor. So, why would she attend a so-called witch's Sabbath for mutton stew and plotting? Could her Catholic ties and outspoken nature have been the real reason she was targeted? And Jennet Device, what happened to her for years? She was held up as a model of brave testimony. But decades later, she's accused of witchcraft herself alongside a group of others in 1634. This time, her story doesn't hold. The accused are acquitted. And Jennet, she vanishes into the prison system, never heard from again. It's almost poetic. The girl whose voice once carried so much weight is eventually crushed by its echo. Historians still argue whether Jennet believed what she said. Was she manipulated, jealous, desperate for adult approval in a crumbling world? Or did she, like so many others, simply learn too young that survival often comes at the cost of truth? And what of the others? Elizon Device, was she just a frightened teen, trying to impress an official and save herself? Did she really believe in her power? Or was she reenacting the stories her grandmother whispered by firelight? Here's your quirky tidbit before we soften the edges. Centuries later, Pendle becomes a favorite site for hikers and ghost hunters. Some claim to hear voices near Malkin Tower's ruins. Others say they've seen a woman in old skirts, standing at the edge of the woods. Locals sell witches' brews and gift shops. There's even a Pendle Witch Trail complete with cute signage, which makes you pause. Because for all the t-shirts and teacups, for all the historic plaques and costumed reenactments, there were real people at the heart of this. Real terror. Real injustice. The Pendle Witches weren't myths. They were mothers, daughters, healers, beggars, and survivors. And you've walked their paths, felt the fog wrap around your ankles, watched the crowd cheer as the trapdoor fell. And now, as you look back toward the hill, you realize something else. The witch trials weren't about witches. They were about fear, about control, about systems that find the vulnerable and brand them as threats, about what happens when superstition meets power and someone decides to make an example of you. The echo of Pendle still lives in every accusation that spreads faster than truth, in every child turned against their mother, in every courtroom where doubt is treated as guilt. The names may change, the costumes too, but the game, it stays the same. And as you turn away from the ruins, your footsteps soft in the grass, you feel it. The silence, at last, is listening. And now, we ease back from the gallows, from the cold stone of Lancashire Castle, and the wet mist rolling over Pendle Hill. Let the lanterns dim. Let the stories settle like dust on an old shelf. You're back in your bed now, or curled into your favorite chair. The night air around you is still, quiet. The tension we carry through the story can slip from your shoulders. Now let it melt down your arms, out through your fingertips, like smoke from a long-spent candle. The people we've met, Elizon, Demdike, Jennet, and the rest, they're still here in the soil of Lancashire. Their tales echo not because they were witches, but because they were human, because fear is loud, and justice is sometimes quiet. But tonight, the silence belongs to you. You've listened. You've remembered. And that's more powerful than any curse ever muttered under a sliver moon. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the moors again, not as they were, but softened, brighter. No more cold chains, no more shouting crowds, just wildflowers pushing through the stones, a soft breeze skimming over the grass, and the ghost of a voice gentle now telling you that stories survive because someone chooses to carry them, and that someone tonight was you. Sleep easy, sleep deep. The witches are resting now.